In the words of Winston Churchill, to improve is to change, to be perfect is to change often. Today we delve into the annals of history to explore the formation of the Grand Alliance, a pivotal event that altered the trajectory of World War II. Our focus will be on the indomitable Winston Churchill, whose wisdom and determination fostered an unprecedented unity among Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Let us journey back to the early 20th century, to a world on the brink of a devastating war. World War II was in its early stages, and the tides were not in favor of peace and freedom. In the late 30s, Europe was a chessboard of political maneuvering and military might. A shadow was growing in the east, the menacing silhouette of Nazi Germany. Under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, the Nazis were rapidly rearming and expanding, violating the Treaty of Versailles and stoking the fires of aggression. By the summer of 1940, the Nazis had overrun much of Europe. The fall of France, a devastating blow, sent shockwaves around the world. Britain found itself standing alone against the onslaught, their backs against the wall. The Battle of Britain commenced, a brutal air war that tested the mettle of the Royal Air Force and the resilience of the British people. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States watched from a distance. They were firmly entrenched in an isolationist policy, keen on avoiding the bloodshed and chaos that was consuming Europe. President Franklin Roosevelt, though sympathetic to the British cause, was constrained by public sentiment and the Neutrality Acts. Yet in the midst of this gloom, a glimmer of hope emerged. A voice rose above the din of war, a voice with the power to rally nations and inspire unity. This was not merely the voice of a statesman, but of a visionary who saw beyond the turmoil of the present into a future where freedom and peace could prevail. This was the voice of Winston Churchill. His words echoed across the English Channel and the Atlantic, reaching the ears of those in the halls of power and the hearts of ordinary people. His speeches stirred souls, instilling a sense of resolve and defiance against the might of the Axis powers. In these dark times, one man saw the necessity of a united front against the Axis powers. Enter Winston Churchill, a man with a vision and the grit to turn it into reality. In the darkest days of 1940, Churchill assumed the mantle of the Prime Minister of Britain. As the storm clouds of war gathered over Europe, he stood as a beacon of hope, his determination unwavering. Churchill's resolve was simple, yet profound. Resist Adolf Hitler and the Axis powers at all costs. It was a stand that was as brave as it was critical. He understood the stakes at hand. Britain alone could not withstand the might of the Axis. Churchill knew that unity was the key to victory. He sought to foster this unity among potential allies, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union. Churchill began by reaching out to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Their correspondence, a remarkable blend of diplomacy and personal rapport, laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the Grand Alliance. In his letters, Churchill did not mince words about the dire situation in Europe. He detailed the atrocities committed by Hitler and the Axis powers and the imminent threat they posed to the world. Yet, in these letters, there was also a sense of optimism. Churchill spoke of a world free from tyranny, a world where nations could coexist in peace. This vision resonated with Roosevelt, who shared similar sentiments. Their shared ideals became the bedrock of the alliance that would later form. However, Churchill's task was far from over. Convincing the United States to join the war was one thing, but fostering unity with the Soviet Union was an entirely different challenge. With ideological differences and a history of mistrust, this was a diplomatic tightrope that Churchill would have to delicately navigate. Churchill knew that unity was the key, but convincing others would prove to be a monumental task. This was the challenge that lay ahead for him: to bring together nations with divergent interests and ideologies under a common banner to fight against the Axis powers. In the face of adversity, Churchill's relentless pursuit of unity began to bear fruit. As the world found itself in the throes of the Second World War, the need for a united front became all too clear. The formation of the Grand Alliance, a coalition that would change the course of history, was underway. The United States, initially hesitant to be drawn into the global conflict, had been maintaining a policy of neutrality. But the sudden and devastating attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese forces in December 1941 changed everything. The United States declared war on Japan, and Germany in turn declared war on the United States. The once neutral nation was now a participant in the global theater of war. In the midst of this turmoil, Churchill saw an opportunity. He had long understood that the key to defeating the Axis powers lay not only in the strength of individual nations, but in their unity. With the United States in the fray, the British Prime Minister reached out to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, fostering a relationship that would become the cornerstone of the Grand Alliance. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union was resisting the onslaught of the Axis powers. Churchill, recognizing the strategic importance of a united front against the common enemy, extended the hand of friendship to the Soviet Union. This was despite ideological differences and past grievances, a testament to Churchill's pragmatic approach to politics and his unwavering commitment to the cause at hand. The first meeting of the Big Three, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin, took place at the Tehran Conference in November 1943. It was here that the foundations of the Grand Alliance were truly solidified. The leaders agreed to a coordinated effort against the Axis powers, pooling resources and strategic strength to bring the war to a swift conclusion. They pledged to open a second front in Europe to alleviate the pressure on the Soviet Union. This resulted in the historic D-Day invasion in June 1944. The Tehran Conference also paved the way for the United Nations, an organization aimed at maintaining international peace and security. The Grand Alliance was more than a military coalition. It was a symbol of hope in a world torn apart by war. It represented the unity of nations in the face of a common enemy, an embodiment of Churchill's vision of a world united against the forces of tyranny and oppression. The road to forming the Grand Alliance was not an easy one. It required diplomatic finesse, strategic vision, and the courage to set aside differences for the greater good. At the helm of it all was Churchill, a leader whose unwavering commitment to the cause of peace and freedom played a pivotal role in shaping this historic coalition. The Grand Alliance, a beacon of hope in a world at war, was finally a reality. The world had come together, under the leadership of these three nations, to fight against the forces that threatened their freedom and peace. It was a testament to the power of unity and a tribute to the indomitable spirit of humanity. The Grand Alliance was more than a military coalition. It was a testament to the power of unity in the face of adversity. This unity, born out of mutual necessity and guided by Churchill's unyielding determination, would go on to shape the course of the 20th century. The most immediate impact of the Grand Alliance, of course, was the defeat of the Axis powers. United in their common purpose, Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union were able to overcome the formidable forces of Germany, Italy, and Japan. This victory marked the end of World War II, but it was only the beginning of the Alliance's legacy. In the wake of the war, the world was left in ruins. Nations were torn apart, families shattered, and entire cities lay in rubble. Yet from this devastation emerged a beacon of hope, the United Nations. Established in 1945, the United Nations was born out of the shared desire for peace among the victors of the war. It was a direct result of the unity fostered by the Grand Alliance, a unity that Churchill had fought so hard to maintain. But the legacy of the Grand Alliance and Churchill's leadership extends far beyond the defeat of the Axis powers and the formation of the United Nations. It can be seen in the enduring bonds between Britain, the United States, and Russia. It can be felt in the collective determination of nations to stand against tyranny and oppression. It lives on in the spirit of cooperation and mutual respect that underpins international diplomacy today. In the end, the Grand Alliance was not just a means to an end, but a testament to the power of unity, the strength of leadership, and the enduring hope for a better world. It was, in many ways, the embodiment of Churchill's unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit to overcome even the darkest of times. And so, as Churchill once said, "This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning." The formation of the Grand Alliance was a turning point in World War II, and its legacy continues to shape our world today. This alliance, a linchpin of unity among Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union, was largely guided by the deft hand of Churchill. His wisdom and leadership were instrumental in forging this coalition against the Axis powers. Its enduring impact reverberates through history, influencing international relations and ideologies. Remember Churchill's words, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts."